Hey guys, it's the Comics Kid 2099, and I am here for what could potentially be an ongoing series of videos. I, as you may or may not know, am an aspiring writer, and that means that growing up, pretty much for my whole life, I have always been trying to come up with story ideas. I remember in kindergarten coming up with my very own, very crude comic book, and ever since then I've been interested in the art form. And as I grew older, I realized I wasn't very good at drawing, but I like to think that I'm decent at writing. So, long story short, I come up with a lot of ideas. Now, I don't actually think that I'm going to ever work at Marvel Comics or DC Comics anytime in the future, but I do think that maybe someday I could be coming up with my own comic book stories that could become comic books that people can read. In any case, I do come up with stories about characters that do not belong to me. Well, I don't so much anymore, although once in a blue moon an idea will hit me and I'll be like, yeah, I need to write that down. So anyway, I have a lot of ideas for characters like Superman, Batman, established characters that DC and Marvel own. And herein comes the title of this video. If you're thinking, hold on now, they didn't really steal your idea, well, I know that. This is mostly just a joke, I guess. I know that nobody actually stole my idea because, for one thing, I don't really let my ideas circulate across the internet. So I know that it's pretty much impossible for something that I think of to then be stolen by a professional writer. This is one of those situations where the idea I came up with is not that unique in the first place, and so it's pretty reasonable to assume that somebody else would come up with this very same idea and do something entirely different with it. So, what is the idea? I don't know if you can read that, but this is the solicitations on IGN for Avengers AI, which will be coming out in a couple of months. There's the cover, which you really can't see. Basically, the premise is a group of Avengers are put together by Henry Pym, and I think all of them are robots, or most of them are robots. You've got Victor Mancha from The Runaways. He will be important later in this video. You've got The Vision, and then you've got a Renegade Doombot. Now, I know those three are robots. I don't know anything about Alexis or Monica Chang, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., but if I had to throw a guess out there, I would say that they are also robots. And that is the idea that they will be going with in this series called Avengers AI. Basically, a team of robots led by Hank Pym, and hilarity ensues, I guess. So, what was my idea, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you. Back when I was in high school, I came up with what I like to think of as this big, huge idea. The basic premise was I combine bits and pieces of all of the alternate Marvel futures that we've seen, and I kind of create a composite Marvel future that is just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So you would see a very little bit of Days of Future Past, Earth X, the Guardians of the Galaxy backstory, the 2099 universe. Basically, I would just take bits and pieces of history from these alternate futures and kind of combine it into one history, and then tell some huge, sprawling, end-of-the-world story from it all. Kind of focusing on the next generation of heroes, but showing that the old generation, Tony Stark, Henry Pym, all those guys, they're still around, they're just 30 years older. And the idea, as I came up with it when I was in high school, was that you would have a 3-issue miniseries, which was where the primary story would be told. This would be set completely in the future and would detail the end of the world and how these heroes are dealing with it. But there would be a series of prologue one-shots that would be set sometime in between the present day and the future that this story would be about. And one of the particular one-shots was called Marvel the End, Mutants and Machines. I should go ahead and mention that the whole story was called Marvel the End. I'm aware that Jim Starlin did something with that title in the early 2000s, but I hadn't read it, and I thought the title was apt since this was actually the end of the universe. Mutants and Machines. This was basically going to be a thing that kind of sort of combined the problems that mutants were seeing in the future with the problems that machines were seeing in the future. But it was going to be two separate stories, one detailing a team of machines that were working for the government, and the other story would detail kind of sort of what was going on with the X-Men in the future. The team that I was going to be working with was Adam Aronson, who was a character from a comic book in the mid-2000s called Machine Teen, Karima Shapindar, Jocasta, the Super Adaptoid, and a couple of the characters from a series called Livewires, which was another one of those kind of teen-oriented books that was in the mid-2000s and had a lot of new characters in it. And basically the premise was very similar to Days of Future Past. You had some machine terrorists in the form of Death's Head and Deathwreck, and they did something like try to assassinate the president or something like that. And then the president says, okay, every sentient machine needs to be working for the government. If they resist, we'll shut them down. If they're too dangerous, we'll just keep them in prison. I don't know why they wouldn't shut them down anyway. And then we'll put together our own little team of machines who will work directly for us. And so Machine Teen, or as he would be called at this point, the new Machine Man, he would be leading this team. And then you'd have several of the Livewires, Jocasta, and the Super Adaptoid. And then you'd have several other machines who would not be working for this team. Ultron, the Machine Smith, a rogue Nick Fury LMD. These guys would be hunted down and they would eventually be destroyed. Karima Shapindar, she's afraid that she would be used to hunt down mutants, and so they would hide her away in some dungeon or something until they could find a way to reprogram her. And the one character who would actually get away scot-free would be Victor Mancha. Everyone knows that he's a machine. In fact, he's been working with the Avengers for some time at this point, but when they start hunting him down, he hides away. And as a side story, Magneto, he would take 3 very large spaceships, and he would basically say, that's it, I wash my hands of this planet, anyone who wants to leave this crappy world can do so, I'm leaving, we're going to find a new planet, and we're going to have peace for the first time ever. This was actually something that was detailed in the backstory of an issue of Guardians of the Galaxy from the 1990s. Ever since I read that, I've always wondered, why doesn't Magneto just do this? We've seen very clearly that there are plenty of spaceships on planet Earth, and it makes a lot of sense that if he wanted to just leave and form his own little country somewhere else, he could do so, and Earth probably wouldn't bother him at all. I know that story-wise this wouldn't work, because eventually Magneto needs to come back so he can be interacting with the rest of the Marvel Universe. But as a character making decisions, it doesn't make a lot of sense why he wouldn't think of this. And anyway, Victor Mancha would approach Magneto and say, listen, I don't need food, water, and air, but as a machine, I can help you guys find these things. Magneto's like, yeah, you can. You can come with me. And so in that way, the mutant storyline and the machine storyline would dovetail. And then the story would kind of sort of end, and then you'd segue directly into the rest of the mutants who stayed on Earth. Yeah, I know technically it's not much of a story, it's really more of this is how this team formed together. This is understandable though, because when I was in high school, I didn't really understand the mechanics of storytelling like I do now. I know that sounds a little bit pretentious of me, but, well, I've grown leaps and bounds as a storyteller since I was in high school, at least I think so. And so, this is the story of how Marvel really didn't steal one of my ideas, but it's interesting that we're going to see a comic book that is kind of sort of using the same idea I came up with, in the fact that it's a comic book about a team of robots who work for Hank Pym. I didn't even have Hank Pym in my story. It's really just the team of robots thing that they're using, and they don't even have any of the ones that I had in my team. Well, they have Victor Mancha, but by the end of my little pitch, or whatever you want to call it, he wasn't even part of the team. And also, this thing isn't going to be set in the future, it's going to be set in the present-day Earth. So yeah, they didn't really steal my idea at all, but I said that at the beginning of this video, so that's fine. And that's it for this video. I may or may not do one of these in the future. This is something that it really just depends on how often I see that Marvel is doing something that at some point in the past I said Marvel should do this. So, until then, I will see you guys next time. Next time I will probably be doing a review for you guys. I hope you look forward to it, and I hope this video found you well. And I will see you guys later. Have a good one.